Welcome back to War Room Pandemic. This is episode 145. On a special programming note, we're doing 1 hour specials every day. We did one up on Sunday with Professor Dr. Edward Luttwak, one of the political thinkers in the world, regarding the CCP in China. It was the geopolitical framework for the war of the CCP against the United States, against America. That would be you that are sheltered at home with no pension fund, no paycheck, and no baseball, and looking at no college football, no NBA finals, just saying. No Ramadan, no Passover, no celebration at your church for the risen Christ, none of that, okay? So we do the pandemic. We talk about the economic crisis and the financial crisis every day of the week, but the overall arching construct is this geopolitical struggle between the Chinese Communist Party in the United States of America and free men and women throughout the world. We're now going to get – so every day we're doing a 1 hour. Today it's going to be an incredible 1 hour. It'll be up at 5 p.m. every afternoon. So I do it as soon as the show is over with the Committee on the Present Danger, the top thinkers throughout the world. We have people from all over that are going to be the guests today and every day of the week as we drill down on the action plan of exactly what the Chinese Communist Party is doing to destroy, yes, your life, your country, your civilization. And remember, this is about the Chinese people, the most decent, hardworking people in the world. When you combine the Chinese people with English common law, you get Hong Kong, you get Taiwan, you get Singapore, you get all the great, not just attributes, but what they've done for American society here in the United States, in England, in Europe. It's just fantastic. And so, yearning to breathe free in China with old Lao Beijing, old 100 names. We get into this every day of the week now at 5 o'clock in a special we put up from the Committee on the Present Danger about the details. We had Brian Kennedy and Frank Gaffney yesterday going into the 4 vectors of how the Chinese Communist Party is trying to destroy you. And today will be another one up at 5 o'clock. We're going to pivot. The president, as he's often done, I think it was in response to a question, right? Dropped a couple of bombs yesterday. Remember, over the weekend, Tom Cotton, the leadership really in the cutting edge in this hasn't really been the administration. Pompeo and the president have been very judicious, very statesmanlike about how they've handled this situation. There's all kind of discussions. We need PPE. Do we need equipment in here? And that's why they're not going as hard as they normally would against the Chinese Communist Party. The lead has been these young fire breathers in the Senate and the House. That has been Josh Hawley in Missouri, Marco Rubio from Florida. Tom Cotton went on Maria Bartiromo, and he essentially said, hey, when they knew they had a problem, right, when they knew they had a problem, then they exported it to the world. I mean, his was the most provocative throwdown of all. Of course, he got into the situation with the students here, and that really was the headline. But the most important thing he said was that. But then yesterday, in a response, you finally, I think, have the media starting to understand the importance of this. In response to a question, the President of the United States really dropped a bomb yesterday.
Polls show that Americans blame China for the spread of the coronavirus, and yet they're taking advantage of the crisis to make the world more dependent on their supply chains. How do you hold China accountable, and how do you keep our country?
Well, Charlie, there are a lot of ways you can hold them accountable. We're doing very serious investigations, as you probably know, and we are not happy with China. We are not happy with that whole situation, because we believe it could have been stopped at the source, it could have been stopped quickly, and it wouldn't have spread all over the world. And we think that should have happened. So we'll let you know at the appropriate time, but we are doing serious investigations.
American businesses from relying on China for their supply chains. How do you fix that?
Well, we've already discussed that, and especially having to do with medical supplies and others. If you look prior to this virus, the deficit was coming way down under my administration because I put massive tariffs on China. We took in tens of billions of dollars, gave some of it to the farmers who were unfairly targeted by China. Nobody's ever done that before. We never took in 10 cents from China. Now, all of a sudden, I think you know very well, we've taken in tens of billions of dollars. I helped the farmers by giving them 2 years ago $12 billion, all coming from China. And we had plenty left over, too. And then the following year, $16 billion.
I want to replay the beginning of that because this goes back to his concept of knowingly responsible. And for folks at home, the reporter's clearly listening to War Room Pandemic because he's that question came right out of here. Okay, here's the important thing. The president said there's all type of, and we're going to figure all this out, these investigations that are going on. Jack, if you're going to spread that COVID around here, Fish,
right.
can you take his temperature?
I need
Do we have the rectal?
Claritin.
Is the rectal thermometer around here somewhere? God, you're the
Vish
sickest
left
guy.
it-
We
Vish left it
broke
with
that
her-
last night playing, Steve.
No, now we're going to get
Family
thrown
show.
at John Fredericks. We're going to get thrown off the radio now.
Where were
Just
we?
take where were we? Just take another pinch of the chewing tobacco. I thought that cured it. I thought that was we've got the ultimate therapeutic thing. It's chewing tobacco. The president said we have invested. People know about these labs: the CDC lab in China, the P4 lab in China. Breitbart Matt Boyle broke an amazing story last night. He got the letter, huge thing that talks about the subcontractor from NIH. It turns out, yes, you that are huddled at home, not outside, with no job and no pension fund, yes, your tax dollars are going to China through Dr. Fauci's and Francis Collins at NIH giving a grant to a group that's working on, guess what, bad viruses, right? Looks like, and it's a U.S. company. Breitbart got the Matt Boyle, the great reporter over there, got the letter that connects the NIH to the company, and they admit it. They've now at least cut the funding off, right? $3.7 million. And by the way, in a $5 trillion, $4 trillion budget, these budgets is not, but it's the direction. You're going to find out most of these scientists were all trained in the United States. That's why Dr. Fauci back in February, and Fauci's never been lit up for this, right? Brad Pitt. He said at the time, they've been totally transparent. I talked to the Chinese scientists all the day. I know these guys. Remember he gave that interview? I know them. They're transparent. I believe them. That's just dead wrong. He's as bad as the World Health Organization. That's another. I don't want to say it's a lie, Dr. Fauci, but that is gross negligence. You gave a false impression of this. Now we found this out. But the most important thing here, and Cuomo said yesterday, December, the most important thing here, knowingly responsible. You hear the president say, hey, I'm not happy about it. They could have stopped it early. That does not mean coming out of a lab or something like that. This means that regardless of where it came from, that in December they knew it. Southampton University, and I'm going to repeat this until it's drilled into everybody's head, 95% of all the carnage, all the death could have been stopped if in that last week of December they had just fessed up and said, hey, we have a problem here. The reason they didn't fess up, which we'll find out over time, it didn't come from a wet market. They were afraid it came from a lab. The Bat Lady said, as Jack Maxey pulled up on Scientific American in March, she's quoted on December 29th when the patients started showing up to Dr. Lee's hospital. Yes, that would be Dr. Lee who brought this up and then died after he was tortured and signed a confession that he was lying, which he wasn't. When those first stood up, the chief scientist, the Bat Lady, says, oh, my God, I hope it didn't come from our lab, right? But the president here, and I want to replay that, this is so important for your life. Because we're going to start, because they're at information war with us, an economic war with us, we're going to start this gentlemanly. We're going to start this using the legal process, and you see with Tom Cotton, and people are putting up Jim Banks and Crenshaw and Hawley and Rubio. They're all putting up. We're going to strip their sovereign immunity. We're going to use we're going to use English common law, right, to go get compensation. He said, hey, it could be, it's a lot more than things. Let's play it again.
Well, Charlie, there are a lot of ways you can hold them accountable. We're doing very serious investigations, as you probably know. And we are not happy with China. We are not happy with that whole situation because we believe it could have been stopped at the source. It could have been stopped quickly, and it wouldn't have spread all over the world. And we think that should have happened. So we'll let you know at the appropriate time. But we are doing serious investigations.
Stopped quickly and stopped at the source and knowingly responsible. Write all that down. If the mainstream media was doing their jobs, if they were doing their jobs, that would have been all last night. Every show, Anderson Cooper, Don Lemon, Rachel Maddow, because that's explosive. I tell you where it exploded, in Beijing, because they go, uh-oh. Not only they have multiple investigations, he's now saying stopped early.
A representative from the Chinese Foreign Ministry made a statement about this morning. He said, American politicians have repeatedly ignored the truth and have been telling barefaced lies. They have only one objective: to shirk their responsibility for their own poor epidemic prevention and control measures and to divert public attention. Now, on top of this, again,
Game on.
and this is what I love. Steve has a great way of bringing the threads together, and English common law is here. In Nigeria, a group of lawyers representing the economic interests of the country are demanding $200 billion in compensation from the CCP for loss of lives, economic strangulation, trauma, hardship, social disorientation, mental torture, disruption of normal daily existence of the people of Nigeria. They have a two-pronged approach. They are going to be serving the ambassador at the embassy, and they are lobbying the Nigerian government to bring a case before The Hague.
Ladies and gentlemen, by the way, do we have the thing of the president talking about the Germans? Do we have that second clip from yesterday?
I'm sure Olivia Nuzzi, by the way, while we're waiting for the clip, is queuing up at the Chinese embassy waiting to ask if a president who spread a global pandemic deserves to be president of China.
No, hang on for a second. But this is a great question, and not to be too snarky. Where are you got that little ambassador, and he comes on TV, and he's thrown one softball after another, and never pressed by the American media. You have these guys come up. They also said yesterday, I don't know if we've got it. They said they called our brother Peter Navarro. They said he's got to stop his bald-faced lies and his smears. But Peter's going around, Dr. Navarro's going around. He's got him. We've got him because it's all public information. But there's a system you can look at what comes through their customs. We know they went around and vacuumed up the PPE out of Europe, out of the United States, out of Australia. Okay, this is a known fact. And that, I say, it's premeditated murder. Hey, the name Stephen K. Bannon, it's War Room Pandemic. Bring it. Okay, bring it, you little scumbags. They're the worst. The CCP are the worst group of gangsters in the world. They're smart, right? They're not. It's not. These are bad dudes, bad hombres, and they came right out. They're going to be in your face. Don't think they're going to, because they understand. If this is pressed forward on economic warfare, you strip them of all their assets. The other thing we're going to start going in the next couple of weeks is the wealth they have here in the United States. You're sitting there in your house, the 50% of the American people don't have $500 in cash in your bank.
I want to go right to this. Kevin Hassett was just on CNN, and to your point, Steve, I want to play what he just told Poppy Harlow.
I know. I'm worried. Yeah. I'm worried, and I'm lucky, right? And so let's look into these numbers. So between 16 to 20% unemployment, that's Great Depression levels, unemployment. Sure. You're talking about a contraction in growth of about, or maybe in excess of 30% in the second quarter.
The Wall Street firms are saying minus 20 to minus 30 at an annual rate. Okay. And it could be as much as minus 40. I mean, I've seen a lot of different runs. In fact, I think that the number is so big that we should...
A growth, an correction of minus 40% in the second quarter.
That's if you look at the CBO numbers, they're up about there.
I thought we were going to. I thought in our discussion over the weekend, we love Kevin. I'm one of the guys who'll bring him in the first couple of years of administration. Fabulous guy, very analytical. Walked away
one
from
of the nicest guys.
Nicest guys, but walked away from the consulting business to come back and help the analytical side of the White House, right? Because you can't have too many smart guys looking at numbers. Fantastic guy. But I thought a little bit we were going to try to get on message after the weekend when he dropped Mnuchin saying that we're coming out strong in the third and fourth quarter.
He does come back later and say he does think it'll pick back up July, August, September, but that's after he drops the 40% bomb.
40% bomb. We're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to come back. Curtis Ellis with us next.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Germany sent a bill to China for $130 billion, billion euros for the damages caused by the coronavirus. Would your administration look at doing the same?
Well, we could do something much easier than that. We have ways of doing things a lot easier than that. But Germany's looking at things, and we're looking at things, and we're talking about a lot more money than Germany's talking about. Yeah, please go ahead. We haven't determined the final amount yet.
Thank you, Mr. President.
It's very substantial. If you look at the world, I mean, this is worldwide damage. This is damage to the U.S., but this is damage to the world.
Game on, baby. Come on. In Beijing, they had a restless night. We have ways of doing things. We have knowingly responsible, and we have ways of doing things, and the number is much larger. Note to mainstream media, that was the news from yesterday, okay? Not the rollout, not the overall architecture. Those are all important. The news, Zucker, and who's it? Who's the guy at Phil Griffin at MSNBC? The news was that. We have ways of doing things. Lindsey Graham saying sanctions. Tom Cotton saying strip their sovereign immunity. The lawyer we had on from this is Citizens Riding to the Sound of the Guns. You got a guy in the New York Assembly saying, "Hey, I want to go back and do the terror thing like we did against the Saudis." JASTA, right, is a terrorist move. Everybody's coming. We got in. Was it Nigeria?
Nigeria's looking for a $10 billion payout, and then you have a group of attorneys and the government of Egypt are talking about doing the same thing. And again, these are common law countries.
English common law. Let's bring in now Curtis Ellis. Curtis is one of the architects of President Trump's trade policies. He's been doing this for years at the American Jobs Alliance, one of the great organizations looking out for you. Looking out for your American, particularly manufacturing jobs. Curtis is also the policy director for America First Policies. That's a C4 that supports President Trump. If Peter Navarro is Mr. Inside, Curtis Ellis is Mr. Outside. And as Jason Miller knows, we would always lean on Curtis and Peter during the campaign. They were two guys in the Trump Tower and the campaign headquarters that were 24/7. The kind of the hobbits over there, right? Always coming up with great ideas and great policies and great ideas. You have another great idea. You got guys sanctioning. You're starting something that's even a little more provocative. What is it, Curtis?
We have ways of doing things. There you go. We have ways of doing things. The American Jobs Alliance is launching Boycott China. Boycott China now. The American people can rise to the sound of the guns. Look, every dollar we try to extract out of China, whether it's through a lawsuit, whether it's through the World Court or whatnot, it's actually money that we gave them in the first place. Whether we gave it to them through Wall Street, investing our money there, whether it's through the pension plans that the different state teachers funds and the TSP wants to give them. All of the money that China uses to build its techno-totalitarian surveillance state, that it uses to bribe leaders around the world with the Belt and Road Initiative, it comes from the United States and comes from the West. So one of the things we must do is boycott China. It's not possible at this point to completely stop buying everything from China, but there are a lot of choices out there. And this is something that everyone must do on every level, right? So the U.S. government.
Can we actually, is this actually,
alphabet soup of UN agencies,
hold it,
WHO, WTO,
Curtis, hang on.
Down through the alphabet that are controlled by China and are cat's paws for the Chinese party. We have to cut that off. We have to cut off the Wall Street money flowing to China. We have to insist that American companies move out of China. You saw the Pew poll. You saw the Harris poll. The American people are on to the game. China is waging economic warfare against us, and we can wage economic warfare against them. We have to cut off the blood supply to the cancerous tumor that is the CCP. And their blood supply is dollars, American dollars. We are funding the CCP in aisle 6 of Walmart, as well as through the World Bank, as well as through the World Health Organization, as well as through the NIH giving them grants. There's an entire program of scientific and cultural research that we are funding China through. That's got to end. So every time you display this bumper sticker, you are sending a message to American companies. We're not going to buy the junk that you make in China. You're sending a message to the government. Stop funding Communist Party of China. That's the message.
Curtis, is this practical? I mean, people are going to sit there and go, "Hey, I love Curtis. He's on here. He's always, his hair's on fire. China's stealing our jobs. China's ripping us off at the UN. We're funding all this stuff. China's now in Geneva. They control all the UN organizations there. They're now in the Human Rights, I think, Committee, right? They're everywhere with very little money, with really American-backed money. But when you say boycott China, is that practical? Can we actually do it today? Can we, in fact, decouple? They've already said they're decoupling with us on technology. They announced that in the spring of 2019. They're decoupling, okay? They're going to their own standards. Nobody kind of woke up to that, but that's the biggest geopolitical event of 2019. But can we actually – is your program practical, or is it just people showing their anger?
It's absolutely practical. Look, I have an iPhone, right? Now, iPhone's made in China. I'm not going to throw my iPhone away. I can't throw my iPhone away. But I don't have to buy a new one. I can stick with the one I have, and it'll work, and that'll send a message to Apple that you've got to start moving your supply chains out of China. When I go to the store, I can look at the label. Am I going to buy the T-shirt, the piece of clothing that was made in China, or go down to the next aisle, go further down the aisle, and find a T-shirt that was sewn in Vietnam or sewn in Bangladesh or sewn in Honduras? Ideally, it would be made in the United States, but that's not practical.
Curtis,
what about plenty of choices?
Curtis,
By the way, there's a link on the War Room Pandemic site for these bumper stickers. You can get one right there. You can click the link, or you can go to getoutofchina.us to get one for yourself.
So, Curtis, at a time right now where we're not actually walking down the aisles, we're ordering everything off of Amazon. You can say, hey, I don't want to order off of Alibaba or Rakuten. That's easy to do. But when you're ordering off of Amazon, how do you know where exactly it's made? Because sometimes they go and list things on there. Sometimes it's buried and it's hidden. And how do you go and deal with that when you're ordering online?
No, that's a very good point, Jason. And we need legislation to label that the same way the labels on the stores show you where this stuff is made. Amazon hides it, but the great American patriots, the American manufacturers, they will list where their stuff is made. And then you can check. You can go to the Made in America store, madeinamerica.com, and Roger Simmermaker, How to Buy American. And they'll tell you which companies are making or China, or not made in China, and that's what we have to look at. But hang
on, Curtis.
Hanes, there are other companies in the clothing area that are outside of China already.
Okay, Curtis.
You make a very good point.
Curtis.
Amazon is one of the great enablers of China, and if we wanted to topple the CCP, all you'd have to do is padlock every Walmart in America and take Amazon offline, and within a month, the CCP would topple because it would be starved of resources.
But here's the question. In a day when we're going to have 40% drop in GDP, average Americans got $500 of cash in the bank. What's the increase to their lifestyle right now? My point is Wall Street and corporate America have us jammed in together. I'm all for taking down the CCP. There's a number one priority. But for an average Americans listening to this, the deplorables, how in their life – what's the cost going to be for them to transfer, and what are they going to, because I will tell you, 30 days not in Walmart's not going to bring down the CCP. So how practical is this? These boycotts are very controversial. How practical is it?
Well, it's very practical. If we reduce the influx of Western dollars into China, it has a deliberate effect. And for 30 days, we have gone without outdoors. We've gone without buying things. We've gone without spending a lot of money at restaurants. What we're talking about here is being more aware of how we're spending the money. And we also need to remind everybody who is responsible for this. It is the Chinese Communist Party. Never forget that. And remember that. Who took your Easter away? Who took your Passover away? Who took your Ramadan away? Remember that when you're about to spend money. Are you going to send them your money? Is there an alternative? Maybe you don't buy something, or maybe and then it costs you nothing. You've actually saved money, or find the alternative. And look, this argument that not buying in China is going to cost you more money is the same kind of argument that the tariffs are going to cost the American consumer money. And we know that was a lot of hogwash. If the American consumer was paying for tariffs, why were the Chinese so eager to have the tariffs taken away?
Okay, Curtis, we got 30 seconds. How do people get access to this? It's up on our site. How do they get access to you in 30 seconds?
Getoutofchina.us. Getoutofchina.us, or go to War Room Pandemic, warroom.org, and you'll find a link that'll take you to where you, too, can get a Boycott China sticker. Share them with your family and friends. Put them on your car, your home, and your business.
Curtis Ellis from America's Jobs Alliance, thank you very much for coming on today, talking about the boycott. People want to know what they can do. One thing you do is go to Curtis Ellis' site, get yourself a sticker. This is your participation in this. Somehow they have to be confronted. As President Trump says, we have, ways of doing things, right? We have ways of doing things. That should be the big bombshell. We'll take a short commercial break. We'll be back with the entire team, Ron DeSantis and the president, getting ready to have a press conference momentarily.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. Jack, I want to reset for a second, and we'll bring Raheem in here about the Curtis Ellis of it all and this boycott. But I want you to read. Can you please read the Chinese minister's response? This is a response that American people got to understand. When Tom Cotton's up there, or Peter Navarro's up there, or Mike Pompeo's up there, or Lindsey Graham, you're starting to see now a understanding of one of the approaches here, right? And one of those approaches is to use essentially English common law and use our courts to go after these guys to seize their assets for somebody to start to pay for this. The Chinese are going to be very nervous. Remember, if we cut off American capital, as Curtis just walked through, if you cut off American capital and you cut off American technology, the CCP will collapse. They need American technology, and they particularly need the mother's milk of American capital. So the president goes out there yesterday, does a throwdown, right? Not blustery, trying to be low-key about it. I'm not happy, right? But kind of sets the thing that, hey, knowingly responsible early on, could have stopped it. What did the Chinese minister have to respond to the president of the United States?
Geng Shuang, the representative for the foreign ministry, says, quote, American politicians have repeatedly ignored the truth and have been telling barefaced lies. They have only one objective: shirk their responsibility for their shirk their responsibility for their own poor epidemic prevention and control measures.
Mr. Sweden, let's start at the top. Let's start at the top again. Can you get through one without
yes,
coughing?
I apologize.
Okay. You another chew? Can we get another chew in there?
Maybe that's the problem. 2 hours of swallowing gets old. American politicians have repeatedly ignored the truth and have been telling
It's a family show.
Lies.
It's a family show.
They have only one objective: shirk their responsibility for their own poor epidemic prevention and control measures and divert public attention. And we're watching these, Steve. They are saying this to every single person on planet Earth who is questioning them in any way. They're doing it in Australia. They're doing it to the Nigerians. Heck, they had to meet with 4 different African ambassadors last week because of them being so upset.
Unrestricted warfare, which is their battle plan. And by the way, we are going to get a reading list up here. # War and Pandemic. In the information warfare part of it, they're all in right now. I tell you, who's going to do their own investigation of how people conducted themselves, the Chinese Communist Party, and they're going to have it everywhere. Okay, and they're going to do it some through their running dogs here in the United States, so, like in The Godfather, when they said, "Hey, whoever comes up to you at the funeral, that's the traitor," right? What you're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, the people that start doing all these things and beating up all, from Cuomo to Trump to all of them, trust me, some of these are front-running dogs for the Chinese Communist Party, no doubt, okay? Because right now they're trying to spread throughout the third world that, hey, this is a CIA thing, this thing came from Fort Detrick, this is the Americans. They had this thing about this Army sergeant, right? They've got a poor enlisted person, right, who happened to be over there, and they're saying, oh, she brought it from the United States. They are hell-bent for leather to put this away from they'll blame the Chinese people with the wet market, which we know is a lie. That was blaming their own people. In the expatriates came to me and said, what they're trying to do is demonize the Chinese people in front of the world's eyes as being uncivilized so that they tell them we're the ones that protect you. Look at the foreign devils. The foreign devils, all they do is mock and ridicule you. It was the Chinese Communist Party that came up. They're the ones that had an information warfare. They had that video, remember, of the bat lady, whoever the woman was eating the bat, that came out immediately. That was their misdirection play. And they're now throughout the world trying to do that. Mr. Raheem Kassam.
Yeah, just want to bring your attention and back to what Curtis Ellis was saying. You know, overnight from the show yesterday, we had a poll up on the War Room Pandemic Twitter handle at War Room Pandemic. And the question was, would you be willing to sign a liability waiver before entering a restaurant? And 77.4% of people said yes, which means that a significant majority of Americans are willing to take a risk of being out in public and willing to put themselves on the front lines. And we should use that kind of impetus, use that attitude for the whole Buy American thing. It's not easy to buy American, but it's possible to buy American. Curtis gave this website, howtobuyamerican.com, and I've gone to it. I've never seen it before. It's a pretty good list of things to do there. But there's also so much people can do in their own communities that help for this, and where American ingenuity can come along. Last week I tweeted, hey, why isn't somebody, you know, when you go into a supermarket now, some of these supermarkets have apps you can get on your phones where you go to the barcode of the product and you scan the barcode and it tells you all the nutritional information about the product. Why do we not have such a thing, or why is nobody developing such a thing? And I'm not a developer, so shout out to any developers out there. Hit me up on @WarRoomPandemic, #WarRoomPandemic. Want to try and see if we can do something like this to scan a product or find a product online or install a browser extension into your Google Chrome or whatever it is you're using that says, hey, here's an alternative that's made in America. And I think that would be a really interesting and easy way for to bring about what Curtis was talking about.
Because Zoom, Tencent, TikTok, they're all owned by the PLA. Right? They may not I want this to happen, but this is one of the problems. So much of this technology is either owned by intelligence or backed by the PLA or the CCP.
But your question,
that's a great idea, though.
Raheem, highlights the quisling nature of our legislature. You remember several years ago, even before President Trump was elected, because we were worried about certain products coming in from China. Remember the dog food that was poisoned like their baby food was? And they wanted to have a nation of origin for all food. And the Chinese were the ones who blocked us from making that possible. And there was a little bit of a catch in it, too, because Smithfield and some of these guys were sending carcasses to China and having the meat returned having been butchered over there. So I think one way to look at this would be, and I can't even imagine that these words are coming out of my mouth, but you know, it's been around for a long time, this whole idea of socially responsible investing. Clearly, China is the most socially irresponsible country on
What are you
planet
talking about? This is one of the biggest issues. We're trying to get Frank Gaffney on. We can't. But the Committee on the Present Danger has actually gone after Larry Fink and others. Larry Fink is the leader at BlackRock, right? He's the leader in this. Was it ESG? The term of art. This is one of the reasons that the oil and gas business is kind of like an orphan right now. You don't see, this should be the front, this should be, particularly for the Trump people, should be at the top of the list of this fracking industry that's getting destroyed all the way from Pennsylvania to the Permian Basin, really, in particular the Bakken up in the plains, up in North Dakota. But, and because it's become socially unfavorable, they've gotten, you know, you can't do it. However, you can invest in every company in China. In fact, they promote that you invest in companies in China. This is one that are run by slave labor. This has live organ harvesting. This has the concentration camps of the Uyghurs. Their human rights and their labor, no labor rules, no environmental rules, nothing. Absolutely brazen. And yet the Wall Street faction, who's so up about tobacco and alcohol, and I'm not saying, hey, some of these things, if you, as an investor, particularly institutional investor, you gotta think of it. But remember, they've got every university foundation out of this, and it's one of the reasons that I heard the other day that on the New York Stock Exchange, I think during the Arab oil embargo, the oil companies were something like 25% of the market cap of the New York Stock Exchange back in the 70s, 3% today. Because I kept asking guys, I said, how come there's not some uproar about this that nobody wants to touch it? And the reason they don't want to touch it is this sensitivity the the environmental, social justice aspect of it. At the same time, the exact same people promote the Chinese equities. Remember, this thing on Wall Street, we're getting to this in the specials we're doing every day that'll be up at 5 o'clock for the Committee on Present Danger. One of the reasons, the greatest weapon the United States has, it's not its military. And our military is we're the most powerful military in the world. But nobody wants to get into a kinetic war. The most powerful weapon we have is capital markets, our economy, our economic strength, our understanding of free capital markets, the fact that capital markets here, and the dollar is the prime reserve currency, right? We are the dominant power in the world. Our greatest export is the dollar, right? Hopefully it still exists after we have this $6 trillion bazooka that's now on the Fed. And this is one of the issues here, the law of unintended consequences. The Guggenheim Partners, I'm going to have Gurdowski on here, the head of the Guggenheim Partners, one of the savviest guys on Wall Street, put his letter out to his investors yesterday. We're going to be talking about it later in the week. He said, hey, what's happened here now, we have no earthly idea about the unintended consequences of this. He says, but I'm going to get free market capitalism is over, right? Because this is such massive state intervention. And he predicted a rise of increasing populism and increasing nationalism going forward. It's just, he calls it the age of recriminations. And he says that's going to start in about 6 months to a year when people realize the situation we've got ourselves in with China, and on top of it, the unintended consequences of this financial collapse. So this is why, and look, everybody's awakening to this now. I've had so many people over the last couple of weeks saying, hey, for years I thought you were kind of a nutcase, right? And now it's all starting to come. The scales are coming off people's eyes as they just see the facts. As you just see the facts. And this is why the China hands, and this is why they're attacking. Remember, what they're going to do is they're going to come after the Peter Navarros and the Curtis Ellis in the War Room Pandemic. These are going to be the extremists. These are going to be the hotheads. These are going to be the guys that are outside the norm. These are going to be guys that are too edgy, right? Where you take them. But this is why, and you've seen and nobody's savvier or a better deal guy than Donald Trump. You've seen his journey. He's the first guy to ever confront, in the political system, to ever confront the Chinese Communist Party. He is president of the United States for one simple reason. The managed decline. It was Pat Caddell, God bless him, who another guy they treated like a nut job. This guy was a prophet. You go back and look at his Fox hits for years. He's a Democratic, Jimmy Carter's guy. He was a populist. His polling talked about the decline of America as viewed through the eyes of the working class that felt our elites were comfortable with the managed decline, and that he called it the Smith Project after Mr. Smith goes to Washington, right? But it was America was looking for a leader of either political party, and the Democrats could have stepped in here. If Bernie wasn't so crazy, right, it could have been a Democrat, right? It still may be a Democrat. If you ever got a populist Democrat up there that believed in borders, right, and believed in a strong military and believed in America first, just saying, right, that could come up. But you got to believe in the borders. You have to believe in. I'm not saying you have to be as restrictionist as we are in immigration. And why are we restrictionists in immigration? We're restrictionists in immigration because American citizens, African Americans, and Hispanics, particularly down the food chain, deserve the shot at the jobs. Because they're American citizens. They're the guys bleeding on the battlefield, right? They're stepping up for their country. They're doing the crap jobs out in these beef packing plants. If you're there every day as an essential worker in a beef packing plant, guess what? You deserve a better deal than somebody else, right? And so this is what it's about. But this whole thing now is coming down to the main thing. And the main thing is a confrontation with the Chinese Communist Party. Both of these systems can't work the way they're working, and particularly the fact that on our side of the football, from Bill Gates to the Wall Street houses to the corporatists, they're playing for the other team. That's the problem. They're playing for the other team. I hate to be so brutally blunt about it. They're playing for the other team. President Trump, we have ways of doing things, right? In Beijing, this is only going to get nastier. I tell you why. The Chinese Communist Party, they put that nice front on about how nice, hey, they are nasty. And you see yesterday, they're talking about smears. They're talking about Navarro being a devil, lying about him. Bald-faced lie, they call him. Every day yesterday, they said bald-faced lies. Okay, short commercial break. We're going to return. War Room Pandemic, and hopefully DeSantis and the president will start by then. Give you an update when we return on War Room Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Since I keep my back to the CNN screen, that's where we torture our viewers that can see this. For the radio audience, we always have a massive TV tuned to CNN, normally sometimes CNBC, but just so you can get the chyron. I take it that DeSantis and the president are out there right now speaking because it's 11:30. It's past 11:30, or is this started?
You would be incorrect, sir.
How could that possibly be? It said 11:30.
I sit at my television at 5:30 p.m. every day, ready for the briefing to start. And by 7 o'clock, we have a live briefing. No, but there's a serious point about this. And I think a lot of we've talked about the strategy of the press briefings a lot in terms of what is said, but also how it's presented. Be on time. Be on time. Get the message out, right? And get it clear and get it done. That's what people want to see. They don't want to wait 3 hours every night to hear what's going on. Sorry.
Right. And the clear implication is that you're trying to get everything put together, which means it's not ready before, which means that it's being done last minute. So everyone in the press room is thinking this was just put together within this last hour, so it's not that well versed or thought out.
The British have a saying, close run thing. Winston Churchill in running the war, he had two things: action this day, he would write on memos, and being a close run thing. I have a cheat on doing this. I text Jason and said, tell me when it's going to go. I mean, Jason, it's always an hour and a half late. I think one of the things you got to do is say, bang, if it's 11:30, walk at 11:30, boom, here's what it is, boom, boom, out.
So actually right now, they have the limited pool in the Oval Office, so they're not doing it out at the Rose Garden or
so they're going to do it in there. Okay, fine.
But they have, so nothing on TV yet, but they have Jeff Mason from Reuters just tweeted out real Donald Trump with Governor Ron DeSantis in the Oval. The Florida governor is touting low fatalities in his state, saying it was lower than most people would have predicted. And also Trump says he does not think it's true that South Korea has done more per capita testing. Those are the two things that Reuters, Jeff Mason, has just tweeted out.
So the president's firing back. Okay, I want to bring in very quickly, because we had a great session with Curtis Ellis, and we're talking about the president throwing down yesterday in the Chinese Communist Party. Frank Gaffney, co-founder, co-head of the Committee on the President Danger. We're doing 1 hour specials every day up at 5 o'clock. Have another great one today. Had Frank and Brian Kennedy, the two co-founders, on yesterday. Frank, American people are just coming to the understanding that their money finances the Chinese Communist Party and all these companies. Can you walk through how they can step up and say, no more, I don't want to do this anymore?
Yeah, there's a near-term action, Steve, and thank you for calling attention to it, because it's one of the most important public policy issues I've ever seen in 40 or so years of being here in Washington and in the business. The specific question is, will an obscure, wholly unaccountable board that frankly never heard of before, called the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board. I call it FARTIB for short, but this board decided 3 years ago, under very different circumstances obviously, that they were going to begin investing the retirement funds known as the Thrift Savings Plan, TSP, of the federal government. That means our military personnel and our civilian government employees at the federal level, past and present, their funds in an indexed account that the MSCI All Country World ex-US index specifically has decided should include communist Chinese companies in the mix. Now it's about 11% of that index. So there's some $500 billion in the thrift savings plan. About $50 billion, we're told, is in the I fund, the international fund. That means people who want a diversified portfolio with international shares in it have only one choice. And sometime soon, possibly in the next few days, that one choice will mean that our men and women in uniform and their civilian counterparts are going to be compelled to invest 11% of their I fund in shares of Chinese companies. Now, a couple of things about that. Some of these are companies that are sanctioned by the United States government because they proliferate weapons or they abuse human rights. Some of them are involved in, obviously, oppressing the people of China. Uyghur Muslims, Christians, Tibetans, and of course, all the other Chinese as well, particularly under this so-called social credit system. And finally, some of these are companies that are building weapon systems that have been designed to kill those same men and women in uniform whose retirement funds are going to be going in. And oh, by the way, probably the rest of us too. None of these companies, Steve, not a single one of them, meets the requirements under our statutes for transparency, for accountability, for governance, or even for material risk disclosure that their American counterparts have to have in order to be in our stock markets. How could that possibly be, you may reasonably ask? Well, it's because the Chinese call these state secrets, those kinds of data, and they don't supply them, and the SEC has decided in its wisdom to let them go ahead and be in our stock markets anyway. Some $3 trillion, by some estimates, have migrated our capital markets to these Chinese companies, and now we have a chance, and I pray to God that President Trump will seize this chance to stop this from happening, not to add to the amount, and thereby, think about it, thereby reward the Chinese Communist Party for having inflicted this pandemic upon us by giving them access to our federal government employees' retirement funds. This is scandalous, and worse, it's going to make every single one of those people now, somewhat at least, beholden to the Chinese. So what does that mean? That all of these government employees, all of our military personnel, have Chinese determining their future financial security. This is a formula for disaster on every level, and we've gotten a letter that came out of the Committee on the Present Danger of China over the weekend that had 134 influential figures, including your good self, saying to the president, don't do this. Intervene, stop it. I'm told we've got his attention on it. I pray he will now step up and do just that. Stop the thrift savings plan from investing in China.
Frank, thank you very much. There will be dozens and dozens and dozens of these exposés. You're just going to be stunned about how capital has gone to the Chinese Communist Party to support their oppression of the Chinese people in their military buildup against kids on the 38th parallel, on the ships in the South China Sea, on the bombers out of Guam and Japan. Your servicemen and women at the front line, we're financing the Chinese military, the weapon systems. This is sick and perverted. It's disgusting. It's Frank Gaffney and others. And they're all going to be attacked. They're all going to be attacked. All of us are getting attacked. But that's good. That's good. Over the target. Okay, I want to thank you. 5 o'clock today, we'll have our next special up at the Chinese on Committee on the Present Danger, China, today at 5.